Jai Prabhuji. The excitement that overwhelms me as I contemplate the opportunity presented to us today is palpable. Although this is not our last session in this course of the book Kundalini Yoga, The Power is in You by Prabhuji, we find ourselves on the threshold of closure, the beginning of the end. On this occasion, we will delve into the study of the seventh center and the final center, which is the Sahasrara chakra or crown chakra, is a step that symbolizes the culmination of our course. The seventh center symbolizes enlightenment and transcendence. It is the pinnacle where the long-awaited union between Shiva and Shakti is realized. From the first center at the Muladhara, where the Shakti lay dormant, to the crown where Shiva resides, this journey leads us to the peak of consciousness. We read in the Chakra Nirupana. Here is the excellent, supreme 16th part of the moon, or Kala. She is pure and resembles in color the young sun. She is as thin as 1/100 of a fiber of a lotus stalk. She is lustrous and soft like 10 million lightning bolts, and faces downward. From her, whose source is Brahman, the continuous stream of nectar flows copiously. She is the receptacle of the stream of excellent nectar, which comes from the blissful union of Para and Para, Shiva and Shakti. We find this verse in the Chakra Nirupana by Swami Purnananda. This is the verse number 46. That this center occupies the seventh place is no coincidence, as we read in the book, as the number 7 carries a profound esoteric significance. In various cultures, this number represents the process of creation. For example, we find that in the Bible, it is mentioned that the universe was created in 7 days. In other cultures, this number symbolizes the process of consciousness, which moves from the most subtle to manifesting in the most tangible or gross. So we saw this clearly when we studied in the past the tattvas, which is something so fundamental in the path of Tantra. And on that occasion, we also learned that in the journey that we undertake here in the path of the Kundalini Yoga, we are seeking to invert this direction, moving from the grossest at the Muladhara chakra to the subtlest at the Sahasrara. If in the process of the universe's manifestation, the direction is from the one, the absolute, to diversity, then with the ascension of the Shakti, we move from multiplicity to unity. Unlike the other chakras that we have studied, the lotus at the crown does not have a fixed number of petals. It is said to have infinite ones. It is known as the Sahasrara Dala, which means the lotus of 1,000 petals. And although this term symbolizes more its infinite nature and continuous expansion. So many times we're going to see the lotus of the Sahasrara depicted as 1,000, but what wants to try to express is its continued expansion because it has infinite amount of lotuses, and then this is also symbolizing what is happening in this center, which is the expansion of consciousness. Here, the ephemeral nature of the relative world of names and forms is revealed to us, where every beginning inevitably leads to an end. So this concept brings me to mind the wise words that we find in one of Prabhuji's biographies, which is what we have in the preface of the book. And I would like us to read a certain portion of it now. And he's telling us, whatever awakens at dawn rests at dusk. Every flame that is kindled is extinguished at the end. Only that which begins ends. Only that which starts finishes. But that which dwells in the present is neither born or dies. For that which has no beginning never perishes. I think this last sentence encapsulates perfectly the process of the opening and the merging of Shakti with Shiva in the Sahasrara, a journey towards that infinite expansion of consciousness that we're speaking about. So just to explain a little bit more, if in the relative world, whatever begins ends, as we just read in these beautiful words of Prabhuji, when the Shakti reaches the seventh center and this merging, this union with Shiva happens, then the realization is that we are eternal. In our classes on the Ajna Chakra, we have explored how its opening leads us to a state of consciousness known to Rija. For the ones that saw our class, you probably remember. If you didn't see the class, it's very recommended that you go and understand more about what we're going to be speaking now. So this Turiya is often described as the stateless state. The third eye chakra symbolizes the beginning of the awakening, corresponding to the Savikalpa Samadhi, which means samadhi with seed or diversity. And it is in the Sahasrara where we ascend to Nirvikalpa Samadhi or seedless samadhi, where the perception of duality is completely dissolved. So in the Ajna Chakra, we experience an expansion of consciousness and also this increase in intuition. But we have explored how the opening of the third eye, even though it's giving us this ability to perceive other dimensions beyond what we usually perceive with our physical eyes, and although there is a recognition of the divine in the Ajna Chakra already, okay, remember that we just mentioned how this is representing the beginning of the awakening. So there is another step left after this beginning of the awakening in the Ajna. Yogis who reach this level can still perceive, even though they already perceive the divinity, they have a contact with other dimensions, they have an increase of the intuition, they still perceive a separation between themselves and consciousness. They are maintaining a duality between the observer and the observed. So there is still a sense of witnessing. However, this separation disappears completely in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, where consciousness recognizes itself without distinction or duality as in the previous levels. So I don't know if you remember also how in our discussions on the Anahata Chakra we explore from the book Bhakti Yoga, the Path of Love of Prabhuji, different levels of love, from attachment to transcendental love. So we have the physical love, the emotional love, the intellectual love, the devotional love, and then the transcendental love. Even at the level of the devotional love, despite being a higher love than the physical one because it is directed towards the divine, there is still certain duality. There is still a lover and a beloved. However, in the transcendental love, and I love very much this word because it's explaining exactly what happens in that level, that distinction is completely dissolved, leaving only pure love. So again, this term emphasizes how we overcome that small distance that still remains, allowing only pure love to prevail without differences or separations. So in that specific level of transcendental love, which is what we can then compare with what's happening in the merging of Shakti with Shiva in the seventh center, then we realize ourselves as love. We realize ourselves as consciousness. We realize what we really are. Now I would like us to read from the book, and it says, "It is not an easy task to describe the transcendental or to define the mystery. It is difficult to verbalize what transcends the limits of language and explain what lies beyond words. To say something about Sahasrara Chakra is an authentic challenge because its existence precedes words and language. It is not a center to speak about because it is transcendental consciousness. And to make a small parenthesis before I continue reading, exactly what we were just explaining in regards to this transcendental love. Now, listen to the words that are written in the book, transcendental consciousness, and it's something beyond the words. It comes before language. So this is giving us a more insight about what are we going to try to share with all of you today. So to continue reading, only an authentic, realized master can give us some information about the chakra of the 1,000 petals. Only one who moves in the transcendental and knows its meadows of silence can make the impossible possible and verbalize something of the mystery or explain something of the absolute. Only from the lips of a realized guru can we hear authoritative words about the dwelling place of God at the crown of the head. Perhaps it is called the crown chakra because it is the only one located outside the physical body. The crown is something separate from the king, but when placed on his head, it indicates his position as monarch. And while I'm reading these words, related to these beautiful words, we can also reflect on the ideas that are expressed in another part of the preface of the book, where Prabhuji is expressing something very similar, I found, to what we just read. And we read in the preface. I paint sights, hopes, silences, aspirations, and melancholies, interior landscapes and sunsets of the soul. I am a painter of what is indescribable, inexpressible, indefinable, and unconfessable of our depths. Or maybe I only write colors and paint words. Aware of the abyss that separates revelation and works, I live in a frustrated attempt to faithfully express the mystery of the Spirit. And I want us to focus in these last sentences where he's saying that aware of the abyss that is separating the revelation from books, words, conferences, then enlightened beings live in this frustrated attempt to express and to pass the truth. So we just read in the book how it's almost impossible to do it, but it is telling us that this is not a center that we can be speaking about it, verbalizing and explaining what really happens on it. There is someone, if we can call it someone, there is if we go back to the exact words that we find in the book, only by the authority of an enlightened being, the gurus, someone that reached already that state. And I put a small doubt in the word someone, because in that state is not actually someone. And it's part of many of the things that we've been discussing, how this individuality, this personality dissolves to become the whole. So this is why I was doubting in using the word someone. But in that state, only an enlightened being, a guru, a realized master, does have the authority to speak about what happened in this center, and this is what's happening in the book. And why we are continuing speaking, because when I found myself reading these words and making classes in regards to the seventh center, it's very difficult. And there is a conference by Prabhuji that is entitled "The Truth Cannot Be Verbalized, Tao Te Ching 1.1." And in that blessed opportunity, he begins by reading the first verse of the Tao Te Ching, which says more or less, because as you probably know, there are countless translations and they have slight variations. But he's telling us, the Tao that can be verbalized is not the true Tao. The name that can be given, it is not its true name. Any name that you can give to the Tao is not its true name. And the Tao itself cannot be verbalized, cannot be explained. And he poses this intriguing question to us. How can we teach about the Tao after starting with this interesting verse, which is what happened to me when I was preparing to share with you this brilliant, incredible wisdom in regards to the seventh center. So this question precisely reflects the frustration of brilliant enlightened masters who, despite having books and conferences, encounter difficulties in expressing the inexpressible, as Prabhuji just illustrated to us in the part of the prefix that we have just read. So from here, in that conference, in that lecture, he immerses us in the fascinating explanation of why the truth cannot be verbalized. He takes us from the mind, which is the instrument that we use to verbalize, to the words themselves that are coming from the mind, which are arising from an accumulation and therefore belong to the past. Truth, on the other hand, is an experience in the present and therefore cannot be explained or conveyed in words. Something that deals with the past, come from the past, cannot meet with something that happens in the present. So to illustrate this point, he's using very interesting examples, such as comparing the experience of tasting an orange or a chocolate with the impossibility of explaining its taste through different conferences. It doesn't matter how much I can try to explain, structure, separate, sectionate from beginning to end that experience of tasting chocolate. The person will not be able to know until the person actually tastes a chocolate. And he also talks things like love or friendship as other examples, as experiences that cannot be truly understood until they are directly experienced. And after detailing all these examples and all this process, he presents to us the concept of aparoshanubhukti, that it's direct realization. And if the mind, he says, is not a suitable instrument to grasp the truth, because we already understood how it deals with the past, it comes from the past and then it cannot grasp it, then it will also not be suitable to express it either. Right? How all this lecture began, saying that the truth cannot be verbalized. So we return to our initial question, what we find in the book, that we cannot really speak about what happens in the Sahasrara. So then, why do masters who have experienced the truth still strive to explain and share it? Why Prabhuji has so many books? Why, even though we cannot speak about what's happening in the Sahasrara, there is still a chapter, a section dedicated to explain about it. And he explains us that as egoic phenomena, we experience forgetfulness and we are a disconnection from consciousness. And consciousness, which is Satchidananda, this name of the consciousness that we many times come, existence consciousness and absolute bliss. And here it is important to highlight understanding the absolute part of bliss, which is not like the transient happiness of this relative world, right? The one that we comes and go. It's not something permanent, but it's telling us absolute bliss. So Prabhuji invites us to reflect on how we perceive ourselves, often confused between our sense of infinitude, right? We are consciousness, and consciousness is absolute bliss, ananda. And our perception of our limited body, he's telling us, like, if we put ourselves in front of a mirror and we see ourselves, we see this form and we see that it's limited. So we have this perception of limited body, but in the background, we also have this sense of infinitude because we are consciousness, we are ananda and absolute. And then this kind of confusion, it's generating us suffering. And what we do in order to alleviate this suffering, we resort to various methods, from entertainment to alcohol consumption, just to mention a few. And then we have the enlightened masters, which speak to us of the realization of our true nature. But they are not doing it as a conventional educational process. Through all interactions with society, with their books and different conferences, the intention is to awaken our longing for truth, reminding us that we already are what we desire to be, even though we don't yet recognize it. So while the painkillers, this entertainment, this alcohol, the dances, the parties, he's explaining us very well how they are working as painkillers because they have an effect for a certain time. They are not the actual happiness that we are, eternal happiness that we are seeking for. They are helping us to forget. They are helping us to escape for a moment of this suffering that we have in this confusion of, I feel myself as infinite, but I am trapped in this limited form. This is my perception. Then, versus that, we have the words of the masters that are, we can say, inspiring us to question, to remember. They are igniting this hunger to not only settle for these painkillers that are giving me a little bit of happiness at certain times, then I go back to suffering or sadness. But they are igniting this search for that I can feel that it's greater than myself, something bigger than me. This search for the realization of who we really are. So with these reflections, I would like to leave you with some words from Prabhuji, where he's expressing in regards to this. In our next class, we are going to continue delving into more. We are going to get to know more about this center. And then we have the extra chakra that we're going to be sharing in this course. Thank you so much for joining us today. Jai Prabhuji.
There is something really important in life. And then you need to understand that the lectures and the books of enlightened spiritual master, they are not part of an educational process, but more they are part of a motivational action. It's a motivational to try to, like the painkillers try to bring you forgetfulness, the master try to arise remembering. And in this process of remembering is all spiritual life. It's not you learn something that you don't know. You only try to remember. Meditation is only to try to remember. How can you remember in the peace of meditation? It's like when you are in the street and you meet somebody, some face. I know this person. I know this person. Happens to you sometimes. From somewhere I know this person. And you make efforts and efforts and efforts. And you can't. And you have the person names and in some moment you sit. You buy some juice, something, and you forget about the issue. And when you are totally relaxed in peace, in a moment, the person comes. This is the process. You hear the words of the Master and you try what he talk about. Where is truth? Where is God? Who is God? What is this? What is the Tao? The words don't, and you make efforts, is more difficult. But then meditation, when you relax in the peace of the meditation, when meditation happens, deep in the peace of that lake of the mind, when the lake of the mind is totally peaceful, no one wave, then you can reflect the full moon. And there you can remember. It's not that you remember, but the remembrance arises. And when the remembrance arises, you know, but not know like you know some new information to put in the warehouse of your mind or memory. The Bible utilizes the best word is yada'a, known. כמו שאדם ידע את חווה, like Adam knows Eve. When Adam knows Eve, the Bible means was a tantric knowing. When Adam was sexually with Eve, when you know somebody in the tantric experience of sex, you don't know like the postman know your address, the postman know you, your dentist know you, is to really to know you. And the same word is after used in the Bible. Beyad'ata hayom, and you know today, Beyad'ata hayom, but not only mentally or intellectually, because he say Beyad'ata hayom ve'ashevota el levavecha. It's a kind of yedi'ah, it's a kind of knowledge, wisdom that brings you back to the heart. It's existential, subjective experience, and that can never be trespassed and realize somebody else through words. It's a subjective experience that can never be realized through words or verbal explanations.